Hey y'all. So we are at a new location today. I say we, I'm here and you're with me. So and hopefully it'll work out. They just got finished with some yard work. I just filmed 11 minutes. Yeah, I filmed for 11 minutes and it was great content. And then I realized that you couldn't hear me very well through the mic, between the mic being clipped down here and then the yard work they were doing. So we're just going to start again. And that's okay. I'm going to roll with it. So I'm late coming on this week with what I had mentioned last week, that I was going to start a series on one of my favorite books of all time. And the reason I'm late is my daughter was sick. And so just things like that take priority, right? But I'm going to go ahead and start a little series on my review of this book, specifically how it aligns with helping us, men and women, women and men, as we are coming into the awareness of abusive individuals, narcissism in the world, manipulations out there, and things like that, and how our purpose is to get realigned with our own inner strength and our inner guiding light. So, I hope you'll join me. And also, I'll be publishing other videos too. So, I won't just put only content out there related to this book. I'll be sprinkling in other things along the way that relates to these same kind of topics. So, got some notes here. So, Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype, by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, PhD. So, this book, I was initially acquainted with this book. It's been probably 20 to 25 years, and I don't really want to date myself, but doesn't matter. Um, so I've had this book for a long time, and I read it a very long time ago as well. And I don't remember if I just ran across it or if it has something to do with the fact that my mom had a friend a long time ago who and she's no longer here on this earth, but she lived a very abusive childhood, and her first marriage was very abusive, and she did fairly well in life for herself, as far as I know. Put as far as healing and pushing through, you know. But she one day was at work and she stepped outside for a minute, and on the ledge of the building, and she was the only one at her job at that time. Let me just say that it was a very small, I think it was like a gas station. She was working at a gas station, but this book, not this particular one, but it was sitting on that ledge, and it became, story has it, this is what I've been told, it was a very transformative part of her life, of her healing, to help really accelerate her healing. So, and it's a very transformative book. It's very rich, and it's one that you have to really be sure that you're not just reading with a lot of distractions around you and stuff. It's like you really need to focus if you want to get something out of it. But it can be very transformative, like I said, for women and men. So, if I had to sum up my opinion of this book as far as what it's really all about in one sentence, I would say it's about returning to the wild part of ourselves. And when I say wild, I'm not talking about, drugs and drinking and sleeping around, being crazy, whatever. I'm not talking about that. Society's definition of wild. I'm talking about wild as far as the way God created us. And um, I've got these words written down here: instinctive, innate, intuitive. And then I also looked up Merriam Webster's definition of wild, and that is stated as living in a state of nature and not ordinarily tame or domesticated. And so, what I'm living in a state of nature, that kind of goes along with what I've already said, like that intended way that we were created to live aligned with God's guidance, right? But then that second part of the definition, not ordinarily tame or domesticated, I view as not being jerked around by whatever's hot in the current state of society, because that's always changing, right? And I think that's what drives a lot of people to religion, is having that foundation, those foundational values and beliefs that are the same throughout centuries, and just a strong, solid foundation that's unwavering. So that's what I the way I take that, in regards to this book. Um, so, because wolves are really interesting, and I haven't really read a lot about them, but um, supposedly they have a partner for life. And I don't know that they all do that. I have read different things on this, and people are kind of torn on it. Apparently, it's like the alpha male and the alpha female of the pack, especially, are dedicated to one another, based on what I've read, as far as having that monogamous partner through their lives. And I think that's cool. And anyways, so that's what it's really about. And especially, this is helpful for this is why I'm pulling this book back out in this season of my life, because when you wake up to the darkness that operates in the world through people who engage it through manipulating innocent or naive, vulnerable, unaware people, then because at some point we were all unaware. It may have been way back when we were kids. Some people learn game and how to play and manipulate people at an early age. So, it's a different point on the scale of life for different people, as far as when you come into the awareness that um, not everybody has good intentions. Um, but some of us come into that awareness. It's like we may see hints of it throughout life, but you don't want to believe it. And then as things transpire in your life, because you're unwilling to believe it, it's like that in itself makes you more vulnerable, because you're like, nah, it can't be. Even though you have all these red flags in a friendship or relationship, your family, whatever, there can be all these red flags. And you can still, I'm trying to block the wind here, you can still just be in disbelief. And that disbelief itself can act as a shield, a cover for these manipulative people, because they're like, well, they just don't think that, I have it in me to be cruel to this degree. And, but eventually you get strong enough. I had dreams that were very impactful. And as I was coming into this awareness in my dreams, and they say, whoever they are, the experts, that you can learn a lot about what's really in your subconscious or even your unconscious through your dreams. And I think that's what was happening during my awakening process, because I was having some pretty powerful dreams where I was like facing off with the darkness. And it started out with me being very fearful, and then it ended with me being willing to come face to face with a dark entity, and I didn't run. And ironically, in my real life at that point, that's when I was strong enough to accept the things that I didn't feel like I was strong enough to accept in the past, on a subconscious level. All those red flags, it's like I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, it is what it is. I'm going to call it what it is. Um, it's not only cruel, but it's flat out evil. And that's just how I see it. So, this book is, if you're willing to read it, if you're willing to put in the time, it is, it's so deep. It's so deep. It tells you right here that she teaches us about the awakening process, about that process of reconnecting to our true selves and the state that God intended us to live in, as far as our awareness and our values and our focus in life. It's taught through myths. And what I have learned is that if you try to teach somebody like ABC and it's bullet points, and you're just talking like in nonfiction terms, yeah, you can teach that way. Yeah, you can learn that way. But there's something to be said about lessons that are learned through stories. It's like it reaches a different part of our awareness that's deep. And I think that is probably akin to how symbolism can impact us, and we're not even aware of it, you know? it's all kind of like tied together, that there are ways, and these people who are manipulative, they understand all this. They understand that there are ways to impact another person on a subconscious level, like a magician. I got a story about that your conscious awareness misses. You just miss it. And so you have to, it's not just about paying attention. It's not that simple. And these stories have a way to slip down into that subconscious level and meet head on those lies that have penetrated down to that subconscious or unconscious level. It's like it gets down deep enough that it's like it shakes that up, and that's what wakes you up on the conscious level. Does that make sense? Like, I think about the parables in the Bible, that Jesus taught in parables. I think there's a reason he did that. Well, I think he did it. I think he did it for multiple reasons. Like, number one is safety. If he just came flat out and said things for what they are, straightforward, he probably would have been killed a lot sooner than what he was. There's a bee right around me. Nice. And first it was yard work, now it's a bee. But we're going to get through this somehow. um, so I think he did parables as a means of keeping himself safe so that he could get out more messages longer. And then also I think the parables reach us on that deeper level for a deeper understanding. It's almost like symbolism through what we say. It's magical, man. And like art, I have a strong background in art. I have 2 degrees in art, and what I've learned is that imagery, and the advertisers know all about this, right? um, Images are very impactful like that too, with symbolism, and they transcend language across time and across cultures and language barriers. And so images are powerful too. And I think that maybe that's what it is. I'm putting this together right now with you guys as I'm talking about this. Maybe that's what it is. A story, kind of like if you're listening to a story, you're seeing it play out in your mind, right? It's creating that imagery. And maybe that's what makes it stick and on a deeper level. I don't know. Maybe something interesting to dive into later. But going through the lessons the life lessons related to manipulative people, coming into the awareness of narcissism and all that, um, in alignment with the lessons that this book offers us, I think is going to be a really cool thing to do together. And so I'm excited to do this, and I want to take my time. I don't want to rush through. And I don't remember if I've said this already or if it was just on the first uh, video that I tried to film that I had to scrap because of all the yard equipment, lawn equipment out here. But I will be putting other videos out as well alongside this series. So this isn't the only thing I'm going to focus on the next few weeks. I'm just going to put other stuff out there too. So look for it. Okay. So returning to the wild part of ourselves. That's the one-liner summary that I would give someone. And then I explained to you what I meant by wild: instinctive, innate, intuitive. Um, and then how this relates to narcissism and being manipulated. Um, in the last part of the book, there's a story, and there's a part of that story that she gave the title, The Bargain Without Knowing. The Bargain Without Knowing. And that right there is just a perfect example of what happens. You basically lose this part of yourself when you're manipulated. You give up, you hand over, but it's all unconscious. It's an unconscious process, and you become like a puppet for this puppeteer, this controlling person, and but you don't even realize you're doing it. You're oblivious, and so she calls it the bargain without knowing, and it's kind of like if you're going to be connected to somebody that's influential in your life, you certainly don't want it to be, you don't want it to form and happen in this manner. You don't want to suddenly develop willingly because you're doing it without knowing. You're doing it unconsciously. You don't want to develop these puppet strings that you just attach. And I don't know what you call the top part of a where the puppet strings tie into, whatever this is called, and then just hand it over to the person that's manipulating you. But that's kind of what happens. And so if you are already strong and grounded in a connection with your, call it what you want, with God, with your gut, with your intuition, your inner guiding light, the universe, however you want to call it and consider and think of it, if you're already firmly grounded in that connection, then it's kind of like, I don't think you're going to be as vulnerable to become manipulated. Um, I think that these people who are liars, they're great liars. They're great at deception. I think they can fool just about anybody um, to some degree. But I think the more aware you are on a conscious level, then the less vulnerable you are. So there's a lot to be said about the different levels of consciousness and how we can be influenced and manipulated and persuaded on different levels. And I got to be honest with you, if there are, and this is maybe something I'll look into for the next segment on this series, but I bet you there's a lot of very large companies that have invested great advertising budgets into research on this kind of thing. Like, how can we, in our commercials, in all of our print material, our internet material, whatever it is, advertising stuff, how can we persuade the public to feel like they not only want our product, but they need our product, because that's how they make money. And so if they're willing to invest those advertising dollars, then um, that there's got to be a need for this kind of research out there. And maybe that's something we should all look into and learn, truly learn how our own minds work. Because the more we learn about that, the more in control we're going to be. Because I bet you that the narcissists and manipulative people out there, they certainly know what they're doing, right? So, and what I was saying earlier is I referenced a magician. I was probably 11 or 12. I just look back at myself like this other little child, even though it was me. And it's like, I just think, like, poor little thing. I went to Six Flags once with my parents. There's an amusement park here in Georgia called Six Flags, and they have shows sometimes there. A bunch of roller coasters and stuff too. It's fun. But yeah, I was in this magic show once, front row. And of course, the magician on stage decides to just single me out in the crowd. And this is just an example of how easy it is to be taken advantage of and how oblivious you can be. So he was talking to me. It got my attention, and I was really zoned in and focused on him. I don't remember the details, but in some manner, maybe I thought there was going to be like a punchline coming, like a joke or something. I don't know, but he really had me focused on him, and the whole time he was um, throwing something over my head. And you're thinking, how could you miss something like that? Well, I missed it. Keep in mind, I was a kid too. I didn't even see him do this. And it was a joke. Everybody else thought it was funny. And I know that was part of his skit and everything, and that's fine and good. But it's just an example of the power of our own minds. And there are people like magicians who understand that if you engage someone on the conscious level, then they can work with the other levels of your mind. So you don't catch stuff. So, yeah, it's really incredible. And maybe something we need to look into, how those different levels of consciousness affect us and how our minds work, right? Um, so basically, instead of remaining connected in that wild state to that inner guiding light, our intuition, we unconsciously hand over this connection to whoever it is that's seeking to grab it and take the reins um, and be the driving factor in our lives for their own gain, right? And I think about Adam and Eve sometimes with this because they had already been instructed, in the Garden of Eden. God had just directly, think about again that direct connection. God had directly instructed them on what to do and what not to do. And then here comes along the serpent, which is funny wearing this. I didn't mean to wear this shirt today. I just thought it was cool. Um, but here comes the serpent, and it was through deception. It was through deception. God said, you will die. The serpent said, if you eat the fruit. The serpent said, no, you won't. And it was through deception that they were forever changed and suffered consequence. And so the whole point is that we become wise enough to catch deception in its tracks. And there's so many tactics that we need to learn and look at with that. Um, but I just wanted to take it slow with the introduction to this book. And I thought for this first video, I would kind of give a little bit more in depth my thoughts on that. And then read through some of the contents here just to kind of get you excited. So I'm going to read to you just a few of the things she has here. So just spur your interest, hopefully. So she's got the story of Bluebeard. This was a really cool story, and the different parts of the story that are related to what we're talking about. She says the natural predator of the psyche. Naive women is prey. And again, you can just take this to be people, because it will benefit men as well. Naive women is prey. She's got also information in here about it says the mate union with the other, him for the wild man, Manawi, and the power of two, and this was cool too to learn about, because obviously the title is Women Who Run with the Wolves, and to research wolves is pretty interesting because supposedly they pick a partner for life, and I think that it may only be the alpha male and the alpha female who do this or who are allowed to mate in the pack. I don't know, but they're kind of known for that, being monogamous, even though they're wild creatures. And so I think that's part of this wild nature inside of us. There is a set of values, but it's not something that that we feel burdened by or restricted by. It's a beautiful way to live. It's a way that it's values that we want, you know. And so again, it goes totally opposite to the world's definition of wild, which would be not monogamous. It would just be the opposite. So um, she's got Skeleton Woman, facing the life, death, life, nature of love, um, finding one's pack, belonging as blessing, belonging what we belong, or finding what we belong to. She's got self-preservation, identifying leg traps, cages and poisoned bait. So interesting. The story of the red shoes, brutal loss in fairy tales, and it talks about injury to basic instinct, the consequences of capture. And then there's returning to oneself, loss of sense of soul as initiation, losing one's pelt, the lonely man, the spirit child, drying out, crippling. And then there's another section, nourishing the creative life, the pollution of the wild soul. Little Match Girl is a story that I vaguely remember. And she mentions a part of that story as being staving off destructive fantasy and renewing the creative fire. And then there's marking territory, the boundaries of rage and forgiveness, rage as teacher, um, the transformative fire and right action, righteous rage, um, injured instinct and rage, collective rage, stuck in old rage, 4 stages of forgiveness. Battle scars is chapter 13. Battle scars, membership in the Scar Clan, secrets of slayers, the dead zone. When you've been through narcissistic abuse, doesn't all this kind of ring a bell? It's kind of like I read this so many years ago, and it was a great book. I've actually read it twice, but now that I've been through the things I've been through, and I'm at this stage in my life, it's like I remembered this book, and when I picked it up and I'm flipping through, I'm like, man, it has a whole nother level of relatability now. So I'm hoping that just reading these little bits and pieces of the contents is going to have the same impact on you if you've also been through narc abuse and been entangled with manipulative people. The scapegoat, she says, the scapegoat. And then chapter 14, I'm going to butcher the Spanish title, La Selva Subterránea. I don't know. It says initiation in the underground forest. The story is the Handless Maiden. This is a pretty in-depth story, and I'm going to read to you the different stages of the story, just again to spark that interest and to get you thinking. And let's get prepared to dive in on the next video. So the first stage is the bargain without knowing. Sound familiar? The second stage, the dismemberment. Yeah, these manipulative people tear you apart, don't they? But it's just so subtle, you don't even know it's happening, but you're being crippled. The third stage, the wandering. The fourth stage, finding love in the underworld. Now, this is taking a little bit of a different turn, right? The fifth stage, the harrowing of the soul. The sixth stage, the realm of the wild woman. And the seventh stage, the wild bride and bridegroom. The wild bride and bridegroom, the seventh stage. So, super excited. I hope you are too. And let me just read to you the foreword here. It's pretty cool. In closing, this is again from the author, Clarissa Pinkola, Estes, PhD. We are all filled with a longing for the wild. There are few culturally sanctioned antidotes for this yearning. We were taught to feel shame for such a desire. We grew our hair long and used it to hide our feelings. But the shadow of wild woman still lurks behind us during our days and in our nights. No matter where we are, the shadow that trots behind us is definitely four-footed. Yes, yes. So again, even when we are in the midst of being controlled and manipulated with narcissists, it's kind of like we may not really know exactly what's going on, but we know something's going on. And that's where that longing comes in. We long to be reconnected to that, to our truths, to ourselves, to that inner voice, that inner guiding light, to God's voice, to God's direction. We long for that. We don't know how it got disconnected. We're not even aware really consciously that it's disconnected. But that's what happened. And so I'm excited to go through this book with you. I hope that this has really sparked some interest for you. And I hope you'll join me along for this review. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm going to bring you lots of cool content in the future as well. And feel free to hit the bell so that when I do post a new video that you'll be notified of that as well. Thank you guys for coming along today, and I hope you have a blessed day.